bread, rice, potatoes, fruit, beans. These are the foods people with diabetes are told to fear, off limits, forever. You've probably heard it. Carbs spike your blood sugar. Carbs cause insulin resistance. Carbs are the problem. This is your carbless life now. But here's the truth that most people never hear. Carbohydrates are not the root cause of blood sugar spikes. Insulin resistance develops first, and then your body becomes intolerant to carbohydrates, even healthy ones like fruit. And once you understand why your blood sugar spikes after carbs, something incredibly freeing happens. You realize you don't need to avoid carbohydrates. You take the correct steps to remove the metabolic roadblocks that stop your body from handling them. In this video, I'm going to show you the science-backed strategies that help people become carbohydrate tolerant again, not by managing blood sugar, but by fixing the root cause. Yes, this is how people eat rice, potatoes, fruit, and beans and watch their blood sugar improve. Before I blow your mind and transform the future of your health, I want to give you something extremely valuable for free. Comment guide below and we will send you our guide with delicious recipes that reverse insulin resistance. Okay, let's get started. Before we talk tactics, we need to fix the misunderstanding. When you eat carbohydrates, glucose enters your bloodstream. That part is normal. The problem happens after that. Glucose needs insulin to enter your muscle cells where it's used for energy. But when you are insulin resistant, those muscle cells are clogged with fat. Researchers have found that when muscle cells have too much fat inside them, called intramyocellular lipid, it interferes with how insulin works. Normally, insulin tells muscle cells to pull glucose out of the blood so it can be used for energy. But when there's excess fat in the muscle, especially harmful fat that builds up when free fatty acids are high, this fat disrupts the insulin signaling inside the cell. Over time, that slows glucose uptake and contributes to insulin resistance, a key step on the path to type 2 diabetes. Here's an analogy. Think of insulin like a key. Think of your muscle cell like a lock. The key still works, but the lock is jammed with grease. So glucose stays stuck in your bloodstream, not because carbs are bad, but because fat is blocking the door. Everything we're about to cover works because it helps clear fat out of cells, slow glucose entry into the bloodstream, and increase glucose uptake by your muscle cells. Now, let's get practical. Strategy number 1, build meals around fiber, what I call the glucose break. Fiber is one of the most powerful tools for stabilizing blood sugar, and it isn't in a pill or a powder. It's in real, intact plant fiber from foods like beans, lentils, vegetables, and whole grains. When you eat fiber-rich foods, especially viscous soluble fiber, something powerful happens. Viscous fiber is a type of soluble fiber that absorbs water and thickens, forming a gel-like substance in your digestive tract. You'll find it naturally in foods like beans, lentils, oats, barley, chia seeds, flax seeds, apples, citrus, and many vegetables. This gel slows down digestion and physically delays how quickly carbohydrates are broken down and absorbed. Instead of glucose rushing into your bloodstream all at once, it enters gradually, like a slow drip. That gives insulin time to do its job and prevents sharp post-meal blood sugar spikes. Clinical studies show that diets higher in viscous soluble fiber consistently lead to lower post-meal glucose, lower fasting blood sugar, and even reductions in A1C over time without cutting carbs or calories. In other words, fiber doesn't block carbohydrates. It controls the speed at which they hit your bloodstream. But that's not all. Fiber also feeds the beneficial bacteria in your gut. These microbes ferment the fiber and produce short-chain fatty acids like acetate, propionate, and butyrate. Those fatty acids aren't just gut fuel. They act as signaling molecules that enhance insulin sensitivity in muscle and other tissues, improve gut hormone release, and promote better glucose handling overall. Meta-analyses confirm that higher levels of these short-chain fatty acids are associated with lower fasting insulin and improved insulin resistance. That's why whole carbohydrate sources behave very differently than refined versions. Millet versus millet bread, whole potatoes versus potato chips, steel-cut oats versus instant cereal. Same carb category, totally different metabolic response. And this is exactly why populations that traditionally ate high carbohydrate, high fiber diets had much lower rates of type 2 diabetes compared to modern Western diets. Large epidemiological studies looking across many countries and dietary patterns have consistently shown that people whose diets were rich in whole plant foods and high in total and cereal fiber, think whole grains, legumes, vegetables, and fruit, had significantly lower rates of developing diabetes over time. For example, prospective research, including thousands of individuals across Europe, found that those with the highest intakes of total and cereal fiber had about an 18% lower risk of developing type 2 diabetes compared with those who ate the least fiber, even after accounting for other lifestyle and diet factors. The protective effect of fiber was especially strong for whole grain and cereal sources, likely because fiber itself slows glucose absorption and supports better metabolic responses. Put simply, when entire cultures based most of their calories on plant-based, fiber-rich carbohydrates, their bodies didn't face the same sharp glucose spikes or chronic insulin stress that drive insulin resistance and diabetes in low-fiber, highly processed diets. That's part of why diabetes was rare in many traditional diets, not because they ate fewer carbs, but because those carbs were high quality and fiber packed. Strategy number 2, don't add more fat to simply blunt the spike. You'll often hear this advice: just add fat to your carbs to blunt the spike. Yes, adding fat can delay a glucose rise, but that's a temporary band-aid, and it actually worsens insulin resistance over time. Here's why. Fat slows digestion, but it also increases fat accumulation inside muscle and liver cells, the exact problem that causes insulin resistance in the first place. So your numbers may look better short-term, while your metabolism gets worse long-term. That's not the Mastering Diabetes approach. The Mastering Diabetes method is different. We don't blunt carbs with fat. We support carbs with fiber-rich, low-fat, whole plant foods that improve insulin sensitivity instead of blocking it. We pair carbohydrates with fiber-rich vegetables, legumes, beans, lentils, chickpeas, intact whole foods. Think rice, beans, vegetables, potatoes, leafy greens, lentils, oats, fruit, berries. Fruit eaten alongside whole fiber-rich meals. This combination works because fiber does what fat can't. It slows glucose absorption naturally. It feeds gut bacteria that produce insulin-sensitizing compounds. It helps clear excess fat from inside your cells, and it does not add to the fat clog that blocks insulin. This is why rice and beans behave differently than rice alone. Not because beans cancel carbs, but because fiber improves how your body processes glucose while insulin sensitivity is being restored. Now, I want to address the most common reaction I hear. Okay, but rice and beans spike me. If that's happening right now, it doesn't mean beans are bad for you. It means your body is temporarily carbohydrate intolerant, and that distinction matters. Carbohydrate intolerance is not a life sentence. It's a reversible metabolic state. Right now, your cells don't respond well to insulin, so even healthy carbs can cause a spike. The goal of eating this way is not to power through spikes forever. It's to restore insulin sensitivity over the next few weeks so those same foods stop being a problem. And this is exactly what we see over and over again. People come in terrified of beans, fruit, potatoes, and rice. They start in small amounts, low-fat, high-fiber meals, and as insulin sensitivity improves, those spikes flatten fast. If this sounds hard to believe, that's normal. Most people are skeptical until they see the data. So don't take my word for it. Go to masteringdiabetes.org and read the case studies. These are people who were convinced carbs were the enemy and now have better blood sugar than ever while eating more carbohydrates than they thought possible. That's not willpower. That's physiology working the way it's supposed to once again. Strategy number 3, build the meal, not the spike. Blood sugar isn't about what single food you eat, and it isn't about eating foods in a special order. What determines your glycemic response is how the entire meal is built. The structure, the fiber content, the sources of carbohydrate, and how they interact in your digestive system. When people say carbs spike blood sugar, they're really observing what happens with meals that are low in fiber, low in intact plant structure, and high in fat. That combination slows digestion unpredictably, overwhelms insulin signaling, and leads to sharp glucose excursions. But decades of research on dietary fiber and whole food carbohydrate patterns show the opposite. Meals built around intact, high-fiber plants slow glucose appearance in the bloodstream, lower post-meal peaks, improve insulin sensitivity, and even reduce long-term markers like A1C. As you already learned, soluble and viscous fibers in beans, oats, barley, legumes, vegetables, and fruit form a gel in the gut that physically slows carbohydrate absorption and feeds gut bacteria that produce short-chain fatty acids, compounds shown to improve how muscle and liver tissues respond to insulin. So instead of asking, how do I eat this without spiking? The Mastering Diabetes approach asks, how do I build this meal so that insulin works again? Here's the structure that consistently delivers stable blood sugar. A large volume of non-starchy vegetables loaded with fiber and micronutrients without raising glucose. A generous portion of legumes, beans, and lentils are among the richest sources of viscous, soluble fiber and resistant starch known to blunt glucose spikes. Intact whole carbohydrates, whole grains like brown rice, quinoa, millet, oats. Carbohydrates in their natural matrix slow digestion and reduce the glycemic load compared to refined alternatives. Minimal to no added fat. Added fats delay gastric emptying and increase fat inside muscle cells, which research shows can impair insulin signaling and raise blood sugar. And here's the key. This isn't about eating foods in a way to hack digestion. It's about eating them together as one complete fiber-rich meal built to support normal glucose absorption and healthy insulin function. Strategy number 4, walk after meals. I like to call this the muscle glucose vacuum. This strategy is extremely underused, but the science behind it is rock solid. A simple 10 to 15 minute walk after meals can drop post-meal glucose dramatically, often without any special equipment, training, or diet tweaks. Here's why this works. When you walk after eating, your muscles contract, and muscle contraction does something powerful. It moves glucose out of your bloodstream and into muscle cells without insulin. In physiological terms, exercise activates a glucose transporter called GLUT4, which effectively opens a side door into the muscle cell that doesn't depend on insulin signaling. So think of walking like this. Main door, insulin, sometimes jammed when you're insulin resistant. Side door, muscle contraction, always available when muscles are active. That means glucose gets pulled into muscles even if your insulin response is sluggish. Your pancreas doesn't have to pump out extra insulin. Post-meal blood sugar stays lower and more stable. The research shows that even light activity, walking, standing, slow housework, increases glucose uptake into muscles and reduces postprandial blood sugar elevations. It doesn't need to be a workout. It just needs to move you. And there's a bonus. Repeating this after multiple meals every day trains your muscles to become more metabolically responsive over time. That's how it helps reduce insulin resistance at the cellular level, not just temporarily lowering glucose, but improving how your cells handle glucose overall. So here's the simple prescription. Finish eating, walk for 10 to 15 minutes. Not fast, not intense, just consistent movement. This turns your muscles into a glucose vacuum right when you need it most and trains them to keep sucking up sugar more efficiently over time. Strategy number 5, carb quality matters. Intact versus processed. Not all carbohydrates are created equal, and it's not because carbs themselves are inherently bad. It's because processing changes how your body digests and absorbs them. When carbohydrates are highly processed, milled into flour, extruded, puffed, or stripped of their physical structure, they are already partially broken down before you even eat them. That makes them easier for digestive enzymes to access and turns them into glucose very quickly after you eat them. By contrast, intact carbohydrates, whole grains, legumes, potatoes, fruit, still have their natural structure intact. Your body has to do the work of breaking them down. That delay means glucose enters your bloodstream more slowly and steadily, giving insulin time to respond without overwhelming it. A controlled trial in people with type 2 diabetes directly tested this idea using whole grains that were the same nutrient-wise, but differed only in how processed they were. Over 2 weeks, participants eating less processed, coarsely milled whole grains had significantly lower post-meal glucose responses and less day-long glycemic variability than when they ate finely milled versions of the same grains, even though the foods contained the same amount of carbohydrate and fiber. Here's what's happening under the hood. Processing alters starch digestibility. When grains are milled fine, enzymes and water get easier access to starch, so glucose is released faster into circulation. Intact structure slows digestion. Larger grain particles and intact kernels force the digestive system to break food down more slowly, lowering the rate of glucose appearance in the bloodstream. Some intact carbs reach the colon. The gut microbiome can ferment undigested carbohydrate into beneficial compounds rather than letting it shoot straight into the small intestine. So it's not carbs spike blood sugar. It's refined carbs, carbs that have been broken down through processing that behave like a fast pour of sugar into your bloodstream. This is why the Mastering Diabetes approach doesn't limit carbs. It prioritizes intact whole food carbohydrates, like whole grains in their intact, minimally processed form, legumes and beans with their natural structure, potatoes, rice, and starchy vegetables cooked and cooled to form resistant starch, whole fruit, not juice or concentrates. When carbs are eaten in their intact form, glucose enters the bloodstream at a slower, more manageable pace, which lowers the metabolic burden on your body and supports better insulin sensitivity long term, not just meal to meal. If you want a full understanding of what to eat to lower your blood sugar levels, comment guide below and we'll send you recipes that reverse insulin resistance. Strategy number 6, timing matters, especially at night. This final strategy surprises a lot of people because it has nothing to do with what you eat and everything to do with when your body can actually handle glucose. Your insulin sensitivity follows a circadian rhythm. You are naturally more insulin sensitive earlier in the day and less insulin sensitive at night, especially in your liver. That matters because your liver plays a massive role in blood sugar control overnight. When you eat late, even if the meal is low carb or healthy, it can reduce liver insulin sensitivity, increase overnight glucose production, worsen the dawn phenomenon where blood sugar rises in the early morning hours. Instead of the liver resting and resetting overnight, it stays metabolically active, pushing glucose into the bloodstream while you sleep. That's why so many people say, I eat great all day and my fasting blood sugar is still high. It's not because dinner had carbs. It's because the liver never got a break. This is why the Mastering Diabetes approach recommends finishing dinner at least 3 hours before bed. Not to cut calories, not to restrict food, but to give your liver time to lower insulin demand, reduce glucose output, improve insulin sensitivity overnight. When that happens, fasting blood sugar improves, often without changing breakfast or medication. The big picture. This is the part most people miss. None of these strategies work because they hide carbs. They work because they fix the actual problem. Every strategy you just learned does one or more of these things. Improve insulin sensitivity, reduces liver fat, clears fat out of muscle cells, allows glucose to enter cells the way it's supposed to. And as insulin resistance improves, something powerful happens. Blood sugar spikes flatten naturally. You stop needing tricks and hacks. Carbohydrates stop feeling dangerous. That's the difference between managing diabetes and reversing the root cause. If carbohydrates were the problem, cultures eating rice, potatoes, fruit, and beans would have been diabetic first. They weren't. The real issue isn't carbs on your plate. It's fat inside your cells. And once that fat is cleared, once insulin starts working again, carbohydrates stop being the enemy and start becoming fuel the way nature intended. And if you want a free recipe guide built off of this exact science, packed with low-fat, high-fiber meals that restore insulin sensitivity, just comment guide below and we'll send it to you. If this video helped you, hit the like button, subscribe to our channel, and share it with someone ready to improve their blood sugar. Until next time, keep those carbs high and that A1C low.